late in the summer after I'd left the DA's office, I decided to try to pursue a grand jury, to get the governor involved and try to get some of the former prosecutors that had been involved in the grand jury investigation back in 1998 to review new things that I had discovered when I was working as the lead investigator in the case.
Now, it may seem as if James Kolar enters the story relatively late, after the Wolf lawsuit launched in 2000, that resulted in the Carnes order in 2003, after the DNA findings in the Bode Lab report, which came out in 2006, and after Lacey's apology letter to the Ramseys in 2008. But in reality, long before Kolar published Foreign Faction in 2012, remember that was a year before the grand jury indictments finally became public, which was 2013. Also around 10 years earlier, that was when Kolar was hired as an investigator with the Boulder District Attorney's Office. Which district attorney? Mary Lacey.
So they asked me to take the lead chief investigator's position as well as the lead role in this case.
So Kolar wasn't just an investigator, he was the lead investigator in the Ramsey case for a period of time. Then on August 12, 2012, Kolar gave an interview to the Telluride News, which was part of an effort to promote his self-published book. And that's where Kolar provided this insight into his background, into Boulder and the Ramsey investigation. This is quoting from the Telluride News. Kolar was part of the Boulder Police Department for 17 years and was working in Telluride when the murder took place. But in early 1997, he was back in Boulder and involved in one of the first leads in the case. By 2005, his role was lead investigator on the case before he returned to Telluride in 2006.
Nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime.
It was not my intention to really come out and write a book about the JonBenet Ramsey case. I always had thought that there would be a successful prosecution in this.
Both Kolar and Steve Thomas's books are essential reading for scholars and dedicated researchers of this case. Both narratives have fantastic coverage of the investigation, but where one is relatively weaker, or perhaps a better way of putting it is thinner, the other delves deeply. So they are both very complementary volumes. If you've read one of the books, I really recommend that you read the other. It's similar to the 1996 Everest disaster. I always say, for the full story, read Into Thin Air and The Climb. Kolar's book has the same high rating, 4.4 out of 5, and almost as many reviews as Thomas's book. The latter is the most popular book of all the books in the Ramsey canon, going by number of reviews. The difference is that Thomas was only exposed to the Ramsey investigation for around 18 months. This means Kolar's overview 14 years later is necessarily a far more comprehensive and integrated update. Also, Kolar went somewhere Steve Thomas did not, because he could not, the DA's office. He was employed by the DA, which meant he had the sort of inside knowledge that very few, precious few, had in this case. And it wouldn't surprise me, this is just my opinion, if Kolar had access of some sort to those elusive grand jury files that have been under wraps for, forever. There's actually a lot more to say about that opinion. And perhaps this is why Foreign Faction is so powerful, because it's peppered with intimate insights in a case that has tried so hard to avoid this sort of scrutiny. As such, I think Foreign Faction is underestimated and underappreciated as a very important analysis. In this analysis, I want to review 3 areas. 1, a brief recap of Kolar's entry into the timeline of the Ramsey case after 2000. Remember, he was already working on the Ramsey case in 1997. Number 2, Mary Lacey's scathing letter to Kolar in January 2007. Remember, this letter preceded Lacey's apology and exoneration letter to the Ramseys by almost a year and a half. It's quite interesting when you look at Mary Lacey. She seems quite harmless in a way. She seems like quite a sweet lady until you read some of the scathing comments that she makes. Number 3, a summary of Kolar's January 2006 presentation to Mary Lacey, and that is actually presented in Foreign Faction on page 271. Before we get to that, just a friendly reminder that this audio and this analysis was first provided or first published on Patreon and then presented as a members-only video, and it will later be released to YouTube probably a couple of weeks later. So many thanks to the members and patrons for supporting this channel. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do consider joining either of those areas or channels if you haven't already. Patreon, True Crime Rocket Science on Patreon. There are almost 500 individual posts on JonBenet Ramsey on Patreon alone, including several chapters, many chapters narrated by me on the Ramsey books. Right now I'm narrating The Day After Christmas, the first book in that series. And let's get going on this review. Let's start with number 1, recap. In an appropriately titled long-form article from Westward, Alan Prendergast describes how the Ramsey investigation got derailed. It's quite an important review. And as you can expect, both Hunter and Lacey are prominent characters in this narrative of derailment and misdirection. What is valuable, I think, about Prendergast's recap is it sketches out the type of person Lacey was in more detail, although, of course, Lacey's biting letter to Kolar, which we'll get to in a second, does that as well. But it also provides an appreciation of Kolar's pedigree. I mean, as a commentator of this case with unusual access to the case files. So let's go to a couple of excerpts from that article in Westward. James Kolar, who was for 2 years the chief investigator of the Ramsey homicide under Lacey, had trouble getting with the program. As he saw it, many of the odd bits of evidence upon which Smith's intruder theory was originally built, an unidentified palm print on the wine cellar door, which ultimately was linked to, or thought to be linked to, Melinda Ramsey, a hair on the blanket that was linked to Patsy, or certainly her side of the genealogy, I guess, and then a footprint in the dust that should really be a boot print that was thought to belong to Burke Ramsey. That had been subsequently identified or explained away, well, in the way that I've just done. Kolar's own review of the video taken of the crime scene convinced him that an intruder hadn't gained entrance through a basement window. Now, all of those things that have been identified by Lou Smith, the palm print, the hair, the boot print, he put in as evidence of an intruder, only for it to basically be fairly definitively linked to one or other member of the Ramsey family. In other words, not an intruder, right? And so, going back to the article, Kolar details in his 2012 book Foreign Faction the tiny abrasions found on JonBenet's body, which Smith believed were burns. I would call them those marks rather, abrasions, because JonBenet also had scratches on her body. Anyway, Smith believed they were caused by a stun gun. Those didn't match up with the prong marks of any stun gun Kolar could find, and so he suspects the impressions may have been made by the metal points of a toy train track found in the Ramsey basement. And I do think the word toy there suddenly puts the whole case in a different category, if that's the word. I mean, think about just how different the idea of a stun gun, which is a serious device in a way, compared to a electrified train track, which is a toy. Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.